Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday. Happy first full week of February. It's great to see you all this morning. John, you were asking about Gabe's music, and I just realized you said to purchase. I don't know if you can purchase it there on iTunes or not, but you can listen to it if you subscribe to any of the major music services. You can listen to the whole thing there. So appreciate you asking about that. Good morning, all. I saw a new James Anderson. Welcome. First time you said. Great to have you with us. So we are in Revelation chapter 5, and I think for some of you, at least one aspect of this is going to be extraordinarily enlightening. We're in this passage that deals with the scroll and the seven seals. And I've already seen in comments, different people throwing out their ideas on what the scroll is. And I told you the word itself and in its context, this kind of scroll with these kinds of seals usually are some kind of a legal document, maybe a last will and testament. That is certainly the form, but we are actually told, I believe, what this scroll is. In fact, centuries, like almost 6 centuries before Jesus walked the earth and died and rose and ascended to heaven and was given this revelation, we are told, or somebody was told, what this scroll is. Do I have your attention? We will get there. All right, so let's take a look. Yeah, Mary Beth says divorce decree. I don't think so. Hang on, I'll show you. So let's take a look at the text itself. This is Revelation 5. John says, "And I saw a scroll on the right hand of him who is sitting on the throne, written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong messenger crying with a great voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?' And no one was able in heaven, nor on earth, nor under the earth, to open the scroll, nor to behold it. And I was weeping much, because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll, nor to behold it. And one of the elders says to me, 'Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has overcome to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals.' And I saw and behold in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures and in the midst of the elders a lamb standing as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, which are sent to all the earth. And he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who is sitting on the throne. And he took the scroll. When he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell before the Lamb, each one having harps and golden bowls full of incenses, which are the prayers of the holy ones. And they sang a new song, saying, 'Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals.' Why? Because you were slain and you purchased to God by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and made them to be to our God kings and priests, and they will reign over the earth. And I saw and I heard the voice of many messengers around the throne and the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a great voice, 'Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive the power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing.' And every creature that is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and the things that are on the sea and the things that are in them, I heard saying to him who is sitting on the throne and to the Lamb, the blessing and the honor and the glory and the might through the ages of the ages. And the 4 living creatures said, Amen. And the 24 elders fell down and they worship him who is living through the ages of the ages. All right, so there is several things. There are several things worth mentioning here. I don't know how much we'll get through today, but I want you to see a couple of important things. So this vision that John sees of the myriads upon myriads, the thousands upon thousands of these heavenly beings worshiping the Lamb, does that remind you of anything? Let me see if anybody has a thought on this. What does this remind you of? Something that we have seen already. So you have this this heavenly vision, and there is someone on a throne with thousands upon thousands ministering to, worshiping, that kind of thing. Anybody? I keep giving time here because I know there's a delay. I'm thinking of Daniel 7. Remember in Daniel 7, he sees the vision. Daniel sees the vision of the 4 beasts, and the 4th beast really gets his attention. And then we read in 7:9, he says, I kept watching until thrones were set and an ancient of days sat, having a cloak like snow, and the tuft of hair on his head was like pure wool. The throne was like flame of fire shooting out, and a stream of fire went out from before him, and 1,000 thousands were waiting on him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him, and books were opened, and a court sat in judgment. So there are so many things here that we are going to see again through Revelation. Later on, we're going to see another scene in Revelation that is just like this one, where there are thrones and judgment, right? Well, in this case, he sees the thousands upon thousands ministering to and attending to the one who sat on the throne. A little bit further, in verse 13, he says, I was watching the night visions, and lo, as it were, a son of man was coming upon the clouds of heaven. And he came as far as the Ancient of Days, and the attendants were present with him. And royal authority was given to him, and all the nations of the earth according to posterity, and all honor was serving him. And his authority is an everlasting authority which will never be removed, and his kingship which will never perish. So first there's a throne with myriads attending to the one on the throne, and then the Son of Man comes to the Ancient of Days, and he is given authority and a kingdom over all. Okay, so that's going to be very important as we continue through Revelation. So in John's vision, did you notice? At first, there is someone on the throne receiving glory and honor and power and might and thanksgiving. And then the Lamb joins him, and all these heavenly hosts proclaim the same words to the Lamb. So he joins the one sitting on the throne and receives the worship of the heavenly host. You see that? So that's all grabbing imagery from Daniel 7 and what he saw. So it's a parallel in the sense that you have the Ancient of Days and the one on the throne, and then the Son of Man and the Lamb. Right? So same kind of idea here. All right, so that's the first thing. I just want to remind you of so much of this is drawn from Daniel, and indeed the key thing that we will see here is drawn from Daniel. Yeah, hang on, Daniel Haas, we'll get there. So John says, I saw a scroll, and it was written on both sides, and it was sealed with 7 seals. Okay? Pretty simple imagery. And now this angel, this messenger, cries out, who's worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals? So let that question linger in your mind for a moment. There needs to be somebody worthy. And he looked, and there was nobody in heaven or on earth or under the earth. No one was worthy to bust open these seals so that what is contained in the scroll can be can be revealed and can be enacted, so to speak. And John says, I was weeping because nobody was found worthy. One of the elders says, don't weep. There is someone worthy. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. Of course, this is Christ, right? And he has overcome by his dying. That's what overcome has referred to in Revelation. By his dying and being faithful to the end, he is now worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals. And that causes all of these creatures to bow down and worship him. Okay? And so he takes the right hand out of the takes the scroll out of the right hand of the one sitting on the throne, and then all these creatures say, worthy are you because you were slain and you purchased, so on. All right. So we are given to speculation at times about these things when the scripture itself already contains the issue. Now, let me set up one more way here. I know the big reveal is coming, and that's kind of a pun, but you don't know where I'm going, so you don't know why that's a pun. Why would John weep that no one is worthy to open the scroll? Have you ever thought about that? So he sees the scroll in the right hand of this one on the throne, and no one is worthy to open it, and John starts weeping. Why would he do that? What is it about this sealed scroll that brings grief and sorrow to John? Well, what has John already told us about his particular situation? What's the setting when John sees this vision? Anybody? Tracking along? Yeah, Megan says, I've been wondering why John would weep. What's the setting? Minimation says, I'm struggling with reconciling Daniel's vision of Christ and permanent kingship with Paul's comment in 1 Corinthians of Christ giving up the kingdom. We'll get there. We'll get there. It'll be a while, but we'll get there. We'll go to 1 Corinthians 15 after we finish Revelation because we're going to have to. What's the setting when John writes this? Yes, tribulation. He's in tribulation, right? He has said already in chapter 1, as he's writing to these 7 churches, I am a partaker with you of the tribulation. This is verse 9. I, John, who am also your brother and fellow partaker in the tribulation and in the kingdom and the endurance in Jesus, the Messiah. I was on the island that's called Patmos. And probably that means, because he says here, because of the word of God and the testimony, probably he is in exile. So it appears that he is being persecuted for Christ's sake. And he's writing to people who are partaking of the tribulation. So there's something about this scroll that is related to the suffering, the persecution, the tribulation that causes sorrow for John because whatever's on that scroll can't be discovered. And that leads to more pain. All right, so let me take you back to Daniel one more time. In Daniel chapter 10 and more into chapter 11, we get, or Daniel gets, he receives from this heavenly being a preview of what is coming. Now, I went through those chapters in the brief series we did over a year ago called The Kingdom in the Last Days. So you may want to look that up if you weren't with us, or just to refresh your memory. And I kind of walk through the history that Daniel sees and how it's played out in the upcoming centuries after he's gone. And there is one correction that I would make toward the end. There is a section that I now believe is talking about the Herods and King Herod, especially toward the end. That's at the end of chapter 11. That I don't think that's the understanding I had at the time I did that series. But nonetheless, for our purposes here today, what matters is Daniel is shown what's going to take place in the upcoming generations after Daniel himself is dead. And there's the Maccabees and Antiochus Epiphanes and Cleopatra and all these figures that we now know. It plays out just as Daniel was shown. Okay? In chapter 12, so at the end of this this foreshadow, this preview of what's coming, in the Septuagint we read this. So this is a continuation of what's coming for future generations. And it says, and at that hour, Michael, the great angel who stands over the sons of your people, will pass by. So Michael is the angel who is assigned to the Israelites, to Daniel's people, right? See, that's what it says here, who stands over the sons of your people. And this combines with what we see earlier in Daniel, that nations are given to gods, to these heavenly beings. There's the prince of Persia who is doing battle with Michael. And that's what keeps the messenger from getting to Daniel as quickly as he wanted. So at that hour, at the end of this long history that's coming up after Daniel's long gone, Michael's going to stand over the sons of your people. And look what it says here. That is a day of affliction. Guess what this word affliction is? It's the same word in Revelation 1 that is translated tribulation. And some of the translations do translate it tribulation. So at that hour, Michael's going to stand over Israel, and this is a day of tribulation, which will be such as has not occurred since they were born until that day. Does that language sound familiar? There is going to be a time of tribulation at that hour, such that has not occurred this intensely before that day. We will see it in Revelation. We see it in the Olivet Discourse. Jesus explained to his generation that what was coming soon upon them was a tribulation so bad, nothing like it had happened before. He's referring to the same thing that Michael, or that Daniel sees. And on that day, the whole people will be exalted, whoever is found inscribed in the book or in the scroll. Now, this is not the scroll of John. Let me show you. But again, we see things that occur again in Revelation. Exalted here can mean raised up. Like there's going to be a resurrection in that day during this tribulation Whoever is found written in the scroll will be raised in that day of tribulation. I think I've said this before, but let that sink in for you. When this tribulation comes about, there are going to be people, Michael's people, or Daniel's people, you could say, who will be raised if their name is written in the scroll. You see that? And many of those who sleep in the flat of the earth will arise. How many times does the New Testament use the word sleep as a euphemism for death? Some to everlasting life, but others to shame, and others to dispersion and contempt everlasting. And those who are intelligent, or wise, will light up like the luminaries of heaven. And those who strengthen my words will be as the stars of heaven forever and ever. Now there's more here, and we'll come back to this because, again, these ideas occur again in Revelation. But for our purposes here today, what is important is to know that Michael is talking about an hour that is coming at the end of this historical account. Well, for him, it's not a historical. it's a preview of history. And it will be a day of great tribulation like has never occurred before. There'll be a resurrection. And here's the thing. You, Daniel, this is the instruction given to Daniel. Hide the ordinances and seal the scroll. Let me read that again for those of you who are driving along and listening to this later via podcast. There's coming this great day of tribulation. There'll be resurrection. But you, Daniel, you hide the commands or the ordinances, and you seal up the scroll until the time of consummation. Do you see it? Daniel, I have shown you some things that are going to happen. I have told you things, but you're not allowed to share them. You are to hide the ordinances on a scroll and seal up the scroll until the time of consummation. Do you see it? Mary Beth says, so the earth is flat. That's great. That's funny. All right, if you're not seeing it, let me come at this one other way. Have you ever wondered why this book, letter, whatever that we are studying is called Revelation? Well, one reason, probably the main reason it's called Revelation, is because the very first word of the book is revelation. Right? This is how it opens. A revelation of Jesus Christ that God gave him to show his servants what things must come quickly to pass. So, following Septuagint practice, typically what we call books of the Bible were named after their first word. Now, in the New Testament letters, usually they're named by the recipients, that kind of thing. But this follows the old practice of just giving it a title. The manuscript itself does not have a title. So when we call it Revelation, that's not inspired. John didn't give this thing a title. So let's talk about this word revelation. Okay? The Greek word that is translated revelation is apocalypto or apocalyptus, depending on the the form, whether it's a verb or a noun. Okay, so let me just use for this illustration apocalypto. The root is kalupto. Kalupto. At the front of it is a prefix. It's a preposition that is appended, that is prefixed to the word, apo, which means from. Kalupto means hiding. So an apocalypse means from hiding. Now, this word, apocalypto, apocalypsis, has been transliterated, and we have this whole genre of literature, like Revelation here, that is called apocalyptic literature. And the things we've been looking at in Daniel would be called apocalyptic literature. And then, of course, it makes its way into our current nomenclature of, if something is apocalyptic, we usually think it has to do with end times, and that comes from a dispensational view of end times, that we're waiting any minute for the Antichrist to be revealed and all this nonsense. But the word itself simply means from hiding. Are you tracking with me? So this book, this letter that we're studying, begins with an apocalypto, which if you read Greek, that's not quite right. I'm not concerned with the form of the word here, but for our purposes, it doesn't matter if it's a noun or a verb. It's a noun, okay? Apo, from, kalupto, hiding. So this reads, a from hiding of Jesus the Messiah that God gave to him to show his servants what things must quickly come to pass. There are things that God has determined that are soon going to come to pass in John's day, and those things were hidden. And now God is giving to Jesus to show John, to show his servants these things, and he's giving it to them from hiding. Kalupto, apokalupto. Revelation 12:4 says, you, Daniel, kalupto the ordinances and seal the scroll until the time of consummation. What is the scroll that John sees? It's the scroll that Daniel was told to hide. Daniel was not allowed to tell everyone everything that he saw. He was to put it in the scroll and hide it. And look at this. Seal the scroll. Now, we're not told how many seals Daniel put on this scroll, but I have a guess. This is why John is weeping. He understands what's happening. It's the time of consummation. And notice I left off. This is different in the Septuagint, and there are even different Septuagint manuscripts. But in this manuscript, at this time of consummation, this time of tribulation, it says, until the many rage violently and the land is filled with injustice. Do you see how this fits with everything else we have seen in the Old Testament prophets? The land of Israel, Jerusalem, is filled with violent rage and injustice And that has provoked God to anger, and he is going to pour out his full and final wrath on Jerusalem and on the Jewish people. That will be the time of tribulation. And it's going to be unlike anything the Jews had seen before. And if you read Josephus, you will get it, because Josephus records the fall of Jerusalem, and it is horrendous. That is the time of the end. That is the end of the age, Matthew 24. That is the end of those things. It's the time of consummation. And Daniel is given a glimpse of what's coming, but he's not allowed to talk about it or to tell it. He is to hide it in a scroll and then seal up the scroll. That scroll is now apocalypto, unhidden, taken from hiding to Jesus, to John, to the churches, so that they can now see what is going to happen in that first century. And no, he is not crying tears of joy. He's weeping because he understands this is the plan. This is the wrath that God is going to pour out on the Jews. But if no one is worthy to open the scroll, it can't come about. Again, if you think of a last will and testament idea, the beneficiaries are the only ones that are allowed to read the will and for the terms to be adjudicated or worked out. So as long as this scroll is sealed, the persecution is going to continue. And the justice that the Jews deserve will go undone. Think about how much persecution of Christians in the first century was brought upon them by the Jews. Saul, before he became the Apostle Paul, Saul was responsible for the first martyr, the first Christian killed by Jews. Well, I guess if you count Christ, he's a second, right? Stephen. And then the rage upon the Christians in Jerusalem was so intense, they had to flee. And this repeated. How many times did the Jews beat Paul, stone him, leave him for dead? And they imprisoned him repeatedly with false charges. Over and over again. Remember when the prophet says to Paul, if you go back to Jerusalem, they're going to tie you up like I've tied you up? If the scroll remains sealed, if there's no one worthy to open the scroll, to break the seals and open it, then the judgment that it contains for Israel, and as we will see, for Rome, that judgment of Christ against those two groups can't come to pass. Daniel saw it. He sealed up and hid it. Jesus unhid it, or God unhid it to Jesus, and because of his death, he is worthy to break the seals and to bring about all of the judgments of God on Jerusalem and on Rome that are contained in the scroll. And John was weeping because it wasn't going to happen, and then once it is announced that there is someone worthy, everyone in heaven, all heaven bursts forth in praise because now it can come about. It was all right there in Daniel. All right, let me see what some of your comments here, and then we will call it a day. Are the people, this is from Scott, are the people in 12:3 the same people who slept in the earth in 12:2? Yeah, well, we'll come back and look at that a little more carefully down the road. If I were Daniel, I can't tell you the temptation I would have to sing like a burning. Probably not after seeing what he saw, though. I think all those visions got his attention pretty seriously. Whoops. Oh, no. What did I do? Oh, all I did was put that on there. Okay. That's a cool feature that I don't use much anymore. Anyway, Lon says the Book of Life and the Scroll of Judgment the same. They are not the same. Nope, two different scrolls. John's scroll is the sealed scroll of Daniel. Exactly. Very good. Does the language of 2 Peter 3 have any bearing? We'll save that for another time. Mary Beth says, if it reveals Christ, the Lamb, then the Lamb is the only one worthy to open it. If it reveals Christ. I'm not sure what the it is. Well, it reveals Christ's wrath. Remember, we haven't covered this yet. In chapter 6, the people cry out for the mountains to fall on them to save them from the wrath of the Lamb. So he has earned the right to open the scroll and to bring his judgment upon those who crucified him and those who are persecuting his people. Does that make sense? Was a mystery now revealed? Indeed. Very good. Dale says, a de-hidification of Jesus Christ. Very well put. Sherry says, and in verse 7, when the holy people are shattered, all these things will be finished. The holy people are not the church. Verse 7 of what? Of Daniel 12. I see what you're getting at. We will come back and look at that at some point. Amy says, no wonder Daniel felt burdened after seeing this vision, right? And it was mysterious, it was unknown, and it was terrifying. Yeah, exactly. Can the consummation last 2,000 years? Nope, it didn't. This all took place in the 1st century. Yeah, I don't think it's tears of joy. I think I already addressed that. Sana says, the longer I'm following your teaching, the more I realize how much we need to know the Old Testament. I wasn't even dispensational, but I know nothing. Nobody's teaching this properly. Yeah, we got to read it. Just got to read it over and over and over again, and particularly in the Septuagint or the Literal Standard Version, because our main English translation, the NAS and NIV and ESV and all those, just there's too much interpretation going on. So, yeah. You think John was waiting for this or realizing it? I'm not sure what that means. Dale says, is John seeing an event that happened as soon as Jesus ascended to heaven? No, I don't think so. I think this is several decades after, and it's about to happen. That's why all that language of these things are about to take place. Dale says, not to make light of God's soldiers, but I do like the image of Michael jumping the Prince of Persia so the messenger could get on with his work. Yeah, me too. It brings a sort of real life aspect to all this too. Alexander says, was John also weeping because he knew the old covenant needed to end to inaugurate the new? Maybe. It seems more likely that it's about there's no justice for those in tribulation if the scroll is left closed. That's what I think is the main thing. Any chance you could show where Revelations was written before AD 70? No. If you go back to the very first video of this series, I admitted there is, in my opinion, no external proof one way or the other. I think the arguments for the late date are very weak and mostly based on assumption. And the arguments for the pre-70 authorship are entirely from the letter itself. So, and I said at the beginning, if Revelation was written after 70 AD, then everything I'm telling you is completely wrong. So I'm owning that on the front end. If it's ever proven not based on assumption, not based on, one obscure early church father who's, decades after all this. If it's ever proven that this was written like in 90 or 100 or whatever, then everything I'm teaching you is wrong. Okay? So I just acknowledge that on the front end. Yeah, Scott, exactly. We're going to see this again as those under the altar who are martyred are crying out, "How long, Lord, until vengeance?" And this will play into what we'll come back tomorrow and look at the prayers of the saints and the incense that someone asked about. James says, I must say I've enjoyed this first visit and so many insightful comments. Great. Well, it's great to have you with us. Hope you can join us again sometime. All right, leave it there. We'll come back and look at the 7 eyes and the prayers and the incense, and then possibly get into chapter 6 tomorrow. Have a great one, everyone. Grace and peace to you.